I'm a classical string player. If you would have told me 5 years ago, hey, can you remote record a string quartet? I would have laughed at you. How many people are team pre-pandemic, Rosie, and were like, nope, no way you can record a string quartet? I was that person. And then when the pandemic hit, it was really like, Videri was rehearsing in New York City when the pandemic hit. And Friday the 13th, everything shut down. And we all went, Jeremiah and I went back to Boston. Mateus stayed up in New York, and we could not rehearse. And the only way I could see us surviving was to figure out a way to remote record. So we decided to put on our arranging competition, Quartets. You had to submit an arrangement that had to do with the pandemic, death, not death really, but death is in there, but more fever, plagues, pandemics. And it was all remote recorded. And we really learned a lot in that album. And it's like, it really has changed our group for the better, because what it really, at least for myself, it really, I was practicing everything. Because if you have to record and listen to every note in an arrangement, you're gonna know it. Like there is no hiding. There should have never been hiding, but there's really no hiding now. So, and it really, really kind of like made us aware that it's like, wow, like if you have, well, at least for me, I think other people probably knew this, but it's like if I knew it and I showed up, there it was. So we realized that this is what we should be talking about this with everybody, because this is something I think everybody should learn to do. I think we're in the future now, and it's just a good thing to know. So we would love to share with you how we were able to remotely record a string quartet album that I'm really proud of as a classically trained musician. So we hope to share some of our insights and, have some fun, ask some questions. You want to take it over, Mateus?
Am I taking it over? Okay. Also, Eli, at any point, if you want to add anything, please interrupt. So, I'm Mateus. I am a third of this panel and a quarter of the Videri String Quartet. Yay! Okay. Let me see. I think we wanted to just give a brief overview of basically the process that we did for Quartets, and also we're also in the middle of recording a second remote recording album titled Goddess, which was also an arrangement competition and designed to feature works by female composers of video game music, which is really awesome. We're super excited. The tracks are sounding great. And we're implementing all of the things that we thought could have been better from our first remote recorded album into this. One of the things was, so we usually started the whole process with just creating a tempo map, right? Does anybody here know what a tempo map is? Just a couple of people? That's fine. All right, so what a tempo map is basically a MIDI file that will tell any DAW, a digital audio workstation, so it could be Reaper or Logic or Ableton, whatever DAW it is that you use. It will tell your DAW like, oh, this is the tempo, these are the measures. If there are any tempo changes, that also gets written in the file. And maybe I can show just very quickly how to do one, maybe.
Oh, yeah. And the reason that's so important is because when you're playing in a string quartet, typically when you're in a live space, you're able to just breathe and move and take the time you want. You're not able to do that if you're playing with a click track. So it really you have to create that time in the MIDI file. And it's not as hard as you think. It's really not.
It is a little small, so if you want to move closer to the screen, feel free to do that. But basically, this is what we're working with. I have this little template here where, funny enough, a lot of people like the default Logic click sound, but I prefer the Ableton sound. And so I sampled the Ableton sound and just threw it in Logic, and so now whenever, oh man, this is very difficult to see. Okay, now when I go here, where's this? Is this middle C? There it is. Wait.
And so the reason, like, because we could have just exported a click track, but like just like what Mateus said, he prefers the Ableton click. Every single one of us on this table, we like a different click. So it's really like when you are recording, you want to be aurally as comfortable as possible. So it is really nice. There's two things. This like creating a MIDI tempo map like this will allow you to cut right into where you want to be. Like when I have zero recording experience. Who has zero recording experience here? Oh my God. Okay, yeah. And so it's like when I first started doing this, I thought that I had to do it in one take. B thought that made me a better player if I could do it in one take. It doesn't. So I never learned how to use a MIDI track to help me, and it was taking me 5 times longer than everybody else because I wasn't able to punch in. So these tempo maps are really valuable.
Yeah, and just to be completely clear, like there are probably an infinite amount of different ways that you can create a click track, right? This one, I'm literally just, I really want the Ableton sound, and that's why I create literally a MIDI track, which is the click track, and then like you can loop this bar as much as you want. You can, copy and paste it. But like the default Logic click is, oh man, it's really hard to see. The default Logic click is this guy here, Klopfgeist, is that what it is? Like ghost click or whatever. So the sound of this guy is, I don't know if you can hear it. I think it's only coming from my, oh, maybe I can, do I have to do this?
It's not great.
Okay, let me see.
Oh, you got it.
Challenge 1,
Yes.
where's the audio routed, right?
Yep, here it is. Okay, so this is the Logic click, right? Yep, you can hear it fine? Cool. Yeah, so to me, like what I don't like about this is that it's not as easy to differentiate what is a downbeat from the other beats, so that's why when I create a click, I prefer like hearing this, and whatever. You can like create your own clicks. You can make like, little recordings of you saying 1, 2, 3, 4, like, and create your click that way. But what is most relevant to us as a group is this line here, right? That you see that right now it is just 120 BPM 4/4, right? But then let's say like, but when we play live, we do a lot of what we refer to just like ebb and flow, right? We like take time here, and then we like recuperate over there, and then like do all these like little nuances. And so very often what we will do is whenever we have a chance to be together, we'll just sit down and then like read through something. Then you can like throw that recording in Logic and then just map out like, here's one bar, here's another bar, here's another bar, and then like Logic will like, okay, like here's the tempo, and then it will like create a bunch of like little dots like this, and like each dot will be like slightly different tempo like this or whatever, and it will create that effect of a tempo that is more flexible, right? And then like you can also use like functions like, I don't know, who here uses Logic? Here, anybody here uses Logic? Okay, yay! All right, Logic people. Over here, like Logic has this, what is it? Tempo operations thing. Where is it? It's so hard to see. Tempo operations. Here it is. Okay. Is it? Oh, here it is. Oh, it's out of focus. Okay, yeah. Like if you want to.
If you know how to fix that, wonderful. Thank you, Riley.
But this is where you can go like, okay, from bar 4 until bar 7. I want to go from the 120 BPM to, let's say, 80, right? And then you see here that it created a little bit of a curve, and it's not continuing the next tempo, but I can click this box, it will continue the next tempo. and right now, it's just doing by bar. Like each bar is reducing in tempo, but you can do it in half notes. You can do it in quarter notes. Typically for us, like eighth notes are the best. Like it's like a good like granular kind of tempo change. And then like you can do also a curve where it's just like, oh, I want to for example, in this example we're slowing down, right? It's like, oh, I want to slow down just a little bit in the beginning and then slow down a lot at the end, so you can do the curve like this way, or you can do the curve the opposite way, like slow down more in the beginning and less at the end. And then when you click apply, like boom, now you have like this curve here, right? So that is nice.
Yeah, and like if you're if you're trying to record for like a game or a film, should you do this? No. This is for chamber music. This is to yeah, I think your audio engineer would hate you.
Hello, Discord.
So I think another really, really important thing is microphones and microphone placing. So you want to talk a little bit about microphones?
Yes. Well, I think the best news is that nowadays it is like not prohibitively expensive to get decent gear. Has anybody here heard of like SE7s microphones? SE7s. Man, I will swear by these microphones. I swear I also like promise I make no money from them. But like a pair of SE7s, let me see. It's funny because like I learned about SE7s before I bought my first stereo pair, and my first stereo pair was Rode NT5s. Anybody here has Rode NT5s? Rode NT5s, right? So Rode NT5s are what, like $500 a pair or something, and then there's one point in the quartet where like I had the Rode NT5s. Somebody else had like the Neumann's equivalent, like of a stereo pair, and then another person bought a pair of SE7s, and then we're like, okay, like let's test this out. So we ran all three stereo pairs like at the very very same spots, running through the same interface, the same preamp, same everything, and recorded us playing something, and we listened through in studio monitors, and it was shocking. Like, NT5s were, like, clearly the worst. Like, they were, I mean, these are all, like, good microphones. These are all really good. But NT5s were, like, clearly the worst, and then we could barely tell the difference between Neumann's and SE7s, which is crazy, because, like, the Neumann pair is, like, what, like $1,500 or something? $1,500. This is, like, what is it? 200 something for the pair, which is crazy. So you can get like really good microphones for not that much.
Well, and I think too, like your instrument is you're gonna have to find what works for your instrument, because I'm a violist. I need a boost from the low end, and I also I really like my A string sound. I think it's a pretty sound. So it's like I really want to lean into like what I like about my playing. And so I ended up getting a ribbon mic and an AKG. I have a 314, which is a weird one. Everybody's like, oh, a 314. It just has more patterns than the 214. And that like blended together gives me a really nice warmth in my upper register, and it really picks up the bass, because the viola really does need a little bit of help in that bass. But I know that that's like much different than what like say Alan's recording off of, or even Eli and Mateo's. Or yeah, those are the violins.
Yes.
So that was and then of course like for the ribbon mic, and I didn't know this, my ribbon mic has a really, really low signal, and so I thought my mic was broken, and it's not. I just had to get a booster. So it's like, if something is like, do your research on your mics, because the second I did research on ribbon mics, well, I have Jeff Williams, my friend who records a lot, he's like, oh, you need a cloud lifter. Solved the problem. So talk to people who know things a lot. Talk to people who play your instrument.
Yeah, ribbon mics are great, but then like they will be a little more on the expensive side. They just will, right? But like if you are looking for an inexpensive way like to get started, I definitely recommend SE7s. Yeah. and then you also need like some sort of an interface. The tricky thing about the ribbon mic is to like, yeah, just like Rosie said, is you also need a really good preamp for the ribbon mic. Otherwise, like when you're trying to get like healthy signal, it will get a lot of hiss and like unwanted noise. Right, Eli? Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Eli has an awesome ribbon mic.
Yeah, I have an old Coles 4038, which is, I think it was invented by the BBC or for the BBC, I guess for the BBC for like broadcast radio stuff. But like Rosie was saying, what I've observed, when I first started doing remote recording, I was using a $100 Audio-Technica mic, and I used that for like 4 or 5 years, and I think I did like a Samsung commercial with it, which at some point the guy I was working for said, it's probably time we upgrade your mics, I'd started working for him at like $20 an hour, and at this point I was at like $60 an hour, still using this $100 microphone. So, but you can get so much done with just a good mic placement, and like that's it. Like putting the mic somewhere, and even in an untreated room, if you have if you put it in the right spot around the instrument, that's another really good one too. Like if you have a friend that can come over and listen while you're playing and just kind of hear where your instrument sounds best. I used to have it, if I had my violin here, I used to have my microphone right here. My friend came over and was listening, and he sounds pretty harsh over here, sounds pretty nice and warm over here. So I never even put it over here anymore. It's always on this side because my instrument has a really nicer sound on the left side. Or on the bass side like that. But like Rosie has a condenser microphone and a ribbon microphone, blending those together, the condenser microphones tend to have more of a like clarity and kind of a capture more of the detail of things, and the ribbon microphone's a lot of more of like a warmer sound. So if you get those together, you can get a really nice clear sound and blend in a little bit more of the warmth of your instrument.
And what Eli said about mic placement, like, again, I know nothing. And it's like I was having to learn how to remote record during COVID with, like, nobody. But you don't need people in the room with you. I actually set up my mic. I had our audio engineer who's up in Canada on a Zoom call, and I would record something and send it to him. And then he would tell me to either move or move my mic placement. And I'd do the whole thing again, record it and send it to him. And you don't need a sound engineer to do that for you. You can use your own ears, right? So it's like, but just trying out different things in your own space and like having another set of eyes, whether it be in the room or not in the room, and just giving you feedback is huge.
Did you have a question about something? Yeah.
So you said that you use both a condenser microphone and a ribbon microphone at the same time. So these are things that you plug into your computer in order to utilize. Like, would you place them in the same place or right next to one another? How would you go about utilizing two microphones?
Really good question.
Great question. Good. You want to go? Go.
Well,
you go.
Well, it depends, So a lot of times I'll use just the ribbon mic and the condenser microphone kind of right next to each other. I'll have the condenser microphone over my treble side and the ribbon one over on my bass side, pretty close to each other. That's kind of a like dual instance, I think they call that, like, or dual mono when you have two microphones that are each a mono microphone, kind of in the same place like that. So I use that a lot of times just if I'm close micing an instrument, if I really want to capture the sound of that one violin. But if you wanted to have more presence from the room, you could say, like, I might have my ribbon mic, just because I love the warmth of it. Sometimes I want that more than the clarity and the detail. I'll have my ribbon mic maybe about 12 to 18 inches above me, and then I might have the condenser mic maybe 8 feet away in the room, kind of at a slight angle pointed towards me to capture the bloom of the sound in the room. So that's a little more, that's getting into more doing more stuff, I didn't do that for a long time. I didn't start using a room microphone until probably about 5 years ago. But the difference is, and if we have time, I can show some of the differences between like what that space of a room does. In an untreated room, you hear the room, and sometimes that's good, sometimes that's bad.
One thing to think about is that like acoustic instruments were designed to be loud. They were not designed to be listened to close up. So it's like with my students all the time, like I actually, like, you have to train yourself, which string players you're going to know, you have to train yourself to ignore the bow noise. And so if you're miking really close, you're gonna get that bow noise. You don't want that bow noise. If you go and you listen to like the old recordings of like William Primrose and like those high fits, the old recordings before they knew the best acoustics, they were recording them right next to each other. You hear that bow sound.
Yeah, the one common theme that you hear here is people are telling you to listen, right? And it's interesting because like the best analogy is to think of the microphone as just a human ear, right? And
Yeah.
it's like, so when Eli and Rosie were saying like, oh, like try moving the microphone or ask a person to listen in different spots, that's literally what it is. It's like, where do you want the ear, right? And if you think
Where do you
about
want
it,
the
yeah,
ear?
you
I
would
like that.
probably not play right to somebody's ear like with a violin. Like that would be very, very harsh, right? And the other thing is like, so how Eli was saying about like two microphones very close, different types of mics, and you can like balance them differently. There's this thing that can happen between the two microphones very close versus, one microphone close, one microphone far is like phasing, what they call phasing issues. So like, it's just like what Eli said, like when you want to have like one close mic and one far mic, you'll want to make sure that that far mic is like at least, what is the rule? Like
3 to 1.
times,
3 to 1
it's
ratio,
3
yeah.
times the distance. So like, if you have the instrument to a mic, that's the distance of your one, right? The other mic has to be at least 3 times that distance. Otherwise, like you get like it's really interesting. Like you start listening, and then you get like these sounds of like
Yeah.
phasing. It's called phasing.
And
Phasing issues.
if you're a physics nerd, the physics of it are really cool. I'm not going to get into it.
Yep.
Look at the overtones and all the mathematics around it. It's wild.
Yeah. So like you can do a microphone that is like very close, and then another microphone that is like 6 feet away. Like that works.
And the reason to do the one in the room is to give some presence and some space, but you can't always add that with some reverb and delay later.
Yeah.
I will say that like if you have it close, you're still gonna hear like kind of the distance your mic was. It'll still sound like it was close to it, but you can always give more presence later with the reverb and delay.
So my advice would be start with the close mic, get that, and then add the room mic in.
Yes, right. Yeah, that would be the rule. But generally, I think in general, I try and keep my close mic 12 to 18 inches away because that's where I've found is it sounds the best for my instrument. If I get too much closer, you can get this kind of, I don't remember what it's called, but it happens more with guitars and stuff. It's like almost like a proximity effect or something. If
Yeah.
your microphone's too close, it's like the sound moving through the projection hole will kind of like thud against the microphone.
Yeah.
Just like if I were to like blow in the mic right now a little bit, just kind of a sound builds up in
What
there.
is what is a common typical like large diaphragm condenser mic? Like
The AKG? the
yeah,
214?
those are yeah.
Yeah.
Those are
it's like 214 is the typical one.
Yeah, that's the.
Yeah.
That's the how many violists do I have out here? Awesome. So you guys know about turning out? Like when you're playing chamber music and you have to be heard, you turn your instrument. That's kind of the whole thought of the microphone is like your sound is going in one direction. Like you want your mics, and I do my mic placement, like I do the AKG and then the ribbon mic over the top, just like down like this, and so that my sound is going right into that microphone, exact like about 2 to 3 feet away. But again, like it is the ear. You want to put your microphones where you're getting that sound.
and tying that into recording in a string quartet remotely. If my microphone is 3 feet away and Rosie's microphone is 20 feet away, and then we try and mix all of our mics together, it's not going to sound like we were, on the same page or in the same room, and we're not in the same room. But if we have a pretty good idea about how we're all doing this and place our mics similarly, then you can start to get a better blended sound.
Yeah, but just quickly talking about different types of microphones. So, like these two, like this is the SE7 frequency response curve, and this is the AKG 214 frequency response curve. Every microphone that you consider buying will have something like this for you to check out. So basically, it's how the microphone responds to different frequencies, right? So like 440 around like here is like the A that the orchestra tunes to, right? 20 is typically considered like the lowest frequency that the human ear can hear, and 20,000 is the highest frequency the humans can perceive, right? So like you can see, I find it interesting. So like those microphones that look like little pencils, like the SE7s that I was talking about, they tend to have like a pretty flat kind of frequency response curve, as you can see here. Like it's rather flat, which is kind of very close to the good fidelity of the sound. And then like every larger diaphragm condenser will have like a very coloring kind of sound. So like if you can see like here, the frequency response curve is kind of crazy, right? It like goes like woo. So that's the AKG 214. It's the I don't know if we can it's just for you to know like what it looks like. Did I delete the 4? Okay.
So
yeah, it's one of these. Like, I mean, you probably have seen this before. Like, it's kind of everywhere, these microphones. Sorry,
I was going to say, like, we've talked a lot about, like, upper strings. I see a question back there. I'll get to that 1 second. But, Alan, what do you use? What kind of mic would you use on a cello?
So when I first started, I was a noob, and I used a blue snowball. And that was not great. And then I was like, oh, what if I got a Blue Yeti? Also not great. So I use a AAR84. It's a ribbon mic. It's done
It's a
great.
ribbon mic, yeah.
But it's been great. It creates a very warm sound. And for cellos in particular, because obviously with higher strings, the sound is pointing up, so you have the mic pointed over the instrument. For cello, we normally have it about 3 feet in front of us from the bottom. So the mic basically is about 3 feet away from my F-holes, and I kind of have it more angled towards the bass because I like more, as Rosie was saying earlier, I also enjoy having a more bassier end, having more of a rounder, richer like bass for the rest of the quartet to sit on. So.
Yeah.
Yep. But then, like, really going back really quickly to that question, then, okay, you get microphones. Yep, we could, like, literally, we could just do, like, a panel on microphones for strings. And then next time, we'll just do that.
Mics are like D&D dice.
Oh, God.
Yeah, it's a rabbit
We're
hole.
not nerds at all.
But, you know, and then, like, you know.
They cost a lot more than D&D dice, but then you look at them and you're like, oh, that looks so shiny.
Yeah. Yep. And then, you know, they all have, like, different polar patterns, right? So, like, the ribbon is literally like a ribbon. So it captures sound, like, from the front and from the back. So you have to be mindful of, like, okay, am I recording in a place where, like, there's glass, like, immediately behind the microphone? That's probably going to be awful because, like, the glass will reflect a lot of the sound. The microphone is going to pick a bunch of it up, you know, and, well, unless you want that effect. Who knows? But, true. But anyway, so you get microphones. Now you need to plug the microphone somewhere, and they don't plug into a computer, straight into a computer, at least not yet.
Hey, Mateus, we had a question. Can I take that real quick?
Yeah, but that was from a previous question. That's why.
Oh,
but,
thank you.
Sorry. So you plug in into an interface, and this is also like you can go crazy from interfaces that are like $100 to many thousands of dollars. Yay, rabbit hole. But generally speaking, like you can get like a decent sound with just like a Focusrite with 2 inputs, Scarlett Focusrite, which is just like a few $100, and the SE7s, like pretty good, decent sound. And then like, just like we were saying, like if you choose to use a ribbon mic, then you will probably want a better interface that has a better preamp to get you that like those like a healthy level. Like for example, like the Apollo Twin like has really good preamps. The Apogee has very good preamps. That's what I use. But those are more expensive. They're like the next tier. Now.
I mean, I started with I had a Zoom 5, the H5 that I was using just as a field recorder. It's also an interface. I didn't have to get an interface, and it's fine. Like mine is really old. I think I need a new one. The Zoom H5.
Yeah.
I mean, it's quite old. You may want to look at newer models at this point, but like, and I will say like the Zoom, I'm just going to give them a plug because I had my Zoom 5 for 5 years, and the outside started to get sticky, and I called the company, and they're like, oh, we'll just replace it. Wow. And they gave me a new one 5 years afterwards, no questions asked. So can very confidently.
Yeah,
push
Zoom
that company.
Zoom makes like some very portable like field recording things. Like they have one that's literally like a block like this size that is just like an interface, and you can also like plug in an SD card, so it can like record directly into the SD card, and like you can call it a day.
That Zoom 5, like when Videri first started, we have recordings that are on Spotify that are recorded with that H5 recorder. It's a really great thing to have. Like if you have a string quartet, bring it, put it in the middle whenever you play.
Yes.
I do want to, I know that you had a question, and then I see a question here. So
So my question is about like the frequency response graph that you were pointing out. When you see like that the graph is maybe going higher on like the lower end, does that mean that the mic is like better at picking up lower end, or is it gonna like?
It means that like it means that when a low frequency hits the mic will respond very strongly to it. Yeah. Yes, so the lower end will sound louder. Yes,
It's
in that case.
boosted a
Yep,
little bit.
boosted.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, it
Yeah.
affects placement. It affects like choice of mic. You know, even I mean, like what is it? DPA. They have like these fun little graphs where they like get, for example, just a dynamic microphone like this one. Yeah, another type of
Which
that
I was
microphone.
going to say, you could even use these, you know, and
Yeah,
record.
and then they're
It
like,
would be
oh,
kind of
if
right.
if your voice is like here, like the frequency response is like this, and then if you do this with the mic, it's completely different. And then if you're like, you know, whatever, like that singers like to do sometimes, right? They like grab the mic, or then it changes the color of the sound, and you know, and singers will do that. They will like be, oh, but I like the color of when I hold the mic, or when I'm like super against the mic, you know. Then it's just a matter of preference, you know. But yeah, a bunch of things can change. Yeah, the color and frequency response.
And
yeah.
if you find that it's boosting it a little too much, just get a little bit further away from the microphone. What I've heard and noticed is that the coloration or the frequency boosts of microphones like that become a little less apparent the further away you are from them, and more apparent the closer you are to them.
Yep.
I mean, it's one of these things too, where it's like, here we are, we're like talking like a few inches away. This would sound so terrible playing. Like, you know, so it's like I feel like we're conditioned to put mics very close to where we want the sound source, and like our instruments are really loud. They're designed to be loud. So we don't, like in the microphones, we want them to pick up more direction. So don't imagine that person with the mic up. Like that's the wrong visual. I know you had a question, and I don't want to.
Great
Aha,
question.
Yeah,
yes.
so
Very
I'm going
good.
to repeat that question just so everyone can hear it. Is there an ideal way to record? Like, who records first? And yes. So, Alan, you want to talk about who should record first?
Yeah, so in any normal chamber music setting, especially in a string quartet, we normally like to work from the bass up. This, you know, technique is usually, you know, when we're dealing with intonation, when we're dealing with balancing, kind of having like a solid foundation is kind of where we first start, and so that's the same thing that we do with remote recording. So what happens is that I get the files first, and then I do my recording, and then
By the files, he means like the sheet music and then
Sheet
that
music,
MIDI tempo map.
any MIDI
right?
tempo maps, any click tracks, any other extra tracks. I'll get those first, and then I'll record first, and then I'll send it to the rest of them. And then I don't know who records after me.
That can change.
That could
Yeah.
change,
It
but
matters less then because we've got you.
yeah.
I
Aw.
will say, like, you all say that can change, but most of the time it's fine. Every once in a while, if the viola is the last one recording, I can't play it in tune. Like, I just can't tune to everybody in the group. So
Yeah.
Because
there-
a lot of times you have the note.
Right.
That needs to move a little, right?
And so it's like, I think it does matter sometimes, and it's just like you're gonna find when it matters and when it doesn't. And like, so I do think an ideal next person to record is the viola, but it's not,
Yeah.
that's not as like it's not a death knell if you don't have the cello.
Yeah, I guess it really depends on like what you're recording and how the composition it pans out. If you have a lot of like inner middle voices that like is like if you have an like a upper string melody and then a lower string foundation, and then you have the middle voices kind of like noodling in between. It might be better to we record the upper and the lower part first, and then have the middle parts like kind of join in later. If it's a free for all, then it's a free for all.
And the other thing, like, and that, I think one of the biggest drawbacks to this is that, like, when you're playing in a string quartet live, you have immediate, like, inspiration from your fellow players. So it's like, like, I'll be playing along and I'll hear Mateus play this little melody that I have, and I really like how he does the bowing, or I really like the articulation. So I change it. But when you're remote recording, you can't do that, because once I have it recorded, like, he's stuck with what I have. And so we actually changed.
Until you decide to like, oh, but I listened to that and now I want to change my recording, and then you record again.
Yep.
That has happened.
Well, that's kind of the process we're doing right now anyway, right, with our next album too. So we recorded demos of everything, and now we can go back and fine-tune that and record it better since we had a demo of it.
Yeah, our first album, Quartets, we just recorded the final tracks basically, and this time around we re-recorded scratch tracks and sent them to the arrangers, and so that we can all kind of all come to an agreement about things before, and it's actually been really great.
Because also Alan's probably going to want to play to all of us in the end, instead of just like he didn't really get a chance to respond to anybody. It's kind of not fair to him.
Oh yeah, that's the other thing. Is like, it's so much fun to play chamber music. It's not as much fun to play one part by yourself in a room with a click track. So when you're the last person to record, it's like magic, unless you can't fit the tuning right. But it's like, because you're suddenly like, you went from sitting alone in COVID to like playing with your quartet again. Like the first time I was the last person to record, it's like I was like sobbing in my room, because it's like I got to play with my quartet again.
Yeah, it's so emotional. And also it's interesting because like, you get to sometimes, depending on where the people place the mics, like you can hear them breathe, and it's like you're wearing headphones and it can like, they're breathing like right like next to you, and you're like, oh my gosh, they're like right here. And you're recording. So it's interesting. In the same way, it's just like, okay, well, I want to hear more of cello, I want to hear more of viola, then you have that option when you're remote recording, and you have their, each of their tracks, you can manipulate the volume to...
You can even I really want to see how my part works with the second violin, and you just play with the second violin. Like, it's kind of the most incredible practice tool ever. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I just wanted to say quickly, very quickly, about room acoustics. We just briefly touched about it, and it's like, by default, it would be the best if you could record in a complete silent room, right? But those are, unless you build a room inside of a room, or you are in an anechoic chamber. Has anybody here been in an anechoic chamber? Yes, it's really cool. Crazy. Yeah. Those are super silent rooms. So you will want surfaces to be sound absorbent, right? And it's very common that we will not have a room that every surface can be sound absorbent. And then the next best thing is having every opposing surface having one surface that is sound absorbent. So for example, your ceiling will probably not have a carpet in it, right? So you can start with having a rug, right? The fluffier the rug, the more sound that it will absorb. So that's cool. If you have one side of the room that has windows, well, it'll probably be hard to put sound absorbing things in those windows unless you really don't want to use them anymore, or unless you create something that is easy to put and then remove, right? So if you have
I use curtains.
A side with windows, then you will want the other side to be as absorbent as possible. Now, what can you use to absorb sound? Well, you can use heavy curtains. You can use this is I'm from Brazil, and so in Brazil we love to be cheap. So you use egg cartons. Egg cartons are basically those fancy studio foams, right? but they're just egg cartons. So like you just use the anyway. So you can use those. They absorb what?
I was just in
Blankets,
too.
yeah.
There's all kinds of
Blankets. Like I've seen people use mattresses. Like they'll just have like mattresses in different walls. But like the idea is like that's the second best thing is like having opposing walls. That one wall is sound absorbent because what you don't want is like the sound to like ping pong like between these walls, right?
So they'll cause that phasing, weird canceling where it makes the instrument sound bad. Like it doesn't sound like itself. Sounds thin.
Yeah, that's it. That's the room acoustics part.
My mom is a big quilter, and so we just
Quilts.
hang quilts on the walls. It's great because then it's like you have this beautiful work of art. So find quilters, make friends with them, hang quilts on your walls.
Yep. Nice. It's also important to have like a file organization system. Oh, sorry. Good.
Oh,
That
wait,
is kind of up to
depends.
you.
Yeah,
It's-
yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's kind of up to you. So like we're saying, like each different type of microphone will have like a different quality to it, a different kind of sound. And let's say like, oh, I really like I want like the high-end detail, like so like I want like the very like higher frequencies detail thing like to be very present. Then you will probably want either a ribbon or a condenser very close, right? Like a large diaphragm condenser close. If you like a little bit lower end, you probably want like a ribbon a little bit further apart, like and to capture the room, I always find that like some sort of a condenser like far away is like the best option. But yeah, like we're saying, it's really kind of up to you and up to the microphone that you're using, right? So
And like one of the best things to do is to just go and in my room, I had pieces of tape on my carpet, and I would record standing on one piece of tape, and then I would move forward, record on this other piece of tape. So I'm really just like getting closer and farther away from the mic, and then I listen to all of them, like label them very clearly, and you just really, it's like this trial and error. I mean, I had a player one time that I was playing with, and he in a quartet, and he would practice all of every bowing that he could possibly think of for a passage, because he said if I mess up when I'm playing, at least I've practiced it. Cool. And it was really like, oh, and so it's like, why am I not doing that with microphones? Like I should be like figuring out like what's the closest I can get, and what does that sound like? What's the farthest I can get? What does that sound like?
And if you're at home, a couple hours of time into it, you're gonna figure out where you probably want your mic all the time. I will say about ribbon mics tend to have more of like a vintage sound kind of, and condenser mics are more of like a more modern sound a lot of times. Sometimes they'll have like the ribbon mics as the room mics to get more of a warm capture of the room versus the more detailed kind of clinical sound. But if you get a ribbon mic, do not send phantom power to it, plus 48 volts, without having something like a cloud lifter or something to take that. Because a ribbon mic...
Or definitely having the gain, make sure the gain is all the way down before you send the phantom power.
Ribbon
in.
mics are very fragile.
Because
Learn how to take care of them.
It's just a little ribbon inside there that the sound passes through, and that's how it captures it.
Like
versus these
I even
other
have,
capsule things.
I won't even leave it uncovered. Like if I am not recording, it has a little cover you put on it so wind won't blow through it. So it's like.
It's so interesting. Like you can literally, if this was a ribbon mic, you could have a trumpet like with the horn like right here.
I don't get it.
Totally fine. If you just say like this in the ribbon mic, it's gone. The ribbon is completely dead.
It's crazy.
Like, okay, like, here's $600 to get a new ribbon. Like, that's literally how crazy it is. Like, no, the cloud lifter is something like to get the signal level from the mic into like a workable, healthy level without cranking the gain too much. So what will protect the mic actually from not being destroyed is actually a pop filter. So like that, it like looks like just they have like different sizes, but it's like mesh,
screen.
on a screen thing. Then you can sing and make.
Yeah,
right
I
next
would
to it.
just like before I got my ribbon mic, I really researched and was just really like, okay, these are the things I have to be really careful to not do to keep this mic from dying.
Ribbon mics are a lot quieter in general, which is why you want to be able to send them phantom power, which is plus 48 volts. You can send that to the condenser microphones without an issue, but if you send it to the ribbon microphone without something to
Protect it,
to,
like
to,
the
to,
cloud
to
lifter.
boost it all the way over there, like a cloud lifter. The cloud lifter is just a name brand of one of those. They're really good.
Yeah.
But other companies make them too, and there's different. Neumann makes them as well. They're really nice.
Yeah. Does LR bags have?
I don't know.
Maybe.
They should though.
Yeah.
Another thing too is like we've all talked about these mics, but if you're recording remotely with other string players, you need to figure out a group sound because it's not gonna work if I'm recording super, super warm with only ribbon mics and Eli's recording and his sound's completely different because we don't want to sound exactly the same, but you do have to have, like,
It needs to be cohesive.
it
to
has
some
to
degree.
kind of sound like we're in similar rooms.
Yeah, and that also starts going into a little bit of mixing, because and this is very interesting. If you have a chance, like I think there are websites where you can like download well-known pop tracks where you can like isolate individual tracks. Sometimes you think like, oh, like this sounds like complete trash by itself, like especially violins. It's like, sometimes the violin will have like this very harsh sound. It's like, oh my gosh, this sounds like just a tin can, complete trash. But then in the middle of the mix, it makes sense because it occupies like a clear part of the frequency spectrum. It balances out everything else, and it's nice. So that's another thing. It's just like
It is funny though.
Well,
right, yeah.
And to like sort of tail into that, it's like sending just one stem. So like when I was sending the viola stem and listening to it, do not add reverb. Don't add reverb because that needs to be added to the group, not the stem. And it's not the best sound. Like we are used to hearing that reverb. So again, like that's exactly what Mateus was saying is like your individual stem isn't going to sound like a recording of Milstein. It's like it's part of a thing that will happen. Yes.
Great question.
I think a lot of it is like, when you're playing chamber music, yeah, you can look at each other, but also there's so much intent within how you play notes. And so I think there's a few things. It's really important you see that score.
Yeah.
Because then you're able to see it's like, okay, am I the only one crescendoing? It's like you have to build in these things around you and kind of leave space for the voices that aren't there. And like what Eli was saying is like a lot of times when you get to that last person, or if you were the first, like say Alan laid down a track and then Eli played it, and then I played it, and then Eli listens back and he's like, oh, I really like your articulation. He's going to go back and re-record. But there is a lot of volume adjustment. I think the best way to think about it is like when I'm playing my viola track, I want my track to have all the volume that I want it, like to have a cohesive volume across the board. And so my fortes kind of hit my forte level and my piano level, and then the engineer and which Mateus does a lot, he can boost it as needed.
But I hopefully, if you've played the piece once with the group you're recording with, that would be the most ideal scenario because then you have an idea how everybody's going to play it. But I've definitely tracked stuff with us here. When I listen back, I'm like, oh God, why did I play that like that? Nobody else did.
Yeah, you miss so much by not being in the room. It's wild. And it's like, it makes you realize it's like, oh yeah, I definitely prefer to record live, but like, this is such an incredible option.
And if you're really a perfectionist about it, you do have the ultimate control to go back and redo it because there's no bleed from anybody else. That's one positive of it.
Yeah. Yep.
I will say that now that you say that, I'm like, okay, because I definitely, at the beginning of COVID, when we were doing this first album, I was like, I'm going to do every track in one take. And that lasted two tracks. I'm surprised I got two. And it's like, I believe as musicians, we tend to lean into OCD a little bit. Like, you'll never play perfectly. It's never going to sound exactly like you want it. And when it's all together, it's going to work out. So it's like, do your best, but don't get defeated if it's not exactly how you want, because you have to remember it's part of something.
Yeah.
So
I think the best way of thinking about it is like, think of a recording as like a snapshot of that time, you know, and then like focus on feeling good. Focus on like, you know, getting good rest, like eating well, drinking lots of water, and like just feeling good in the recording. And like, and then that recording will be a snapshot of that moment, you know, and it will be the best that it can be at that moment. And that's fine. Can you get better in the future? Yes, you can get better in the future. And I mean, we all hope that we do too. And we try to do that, continue to do that. But, you know, it's like, it's a snapshot. It's not going to be perfect. It'll never be perfect. But, you know, it's a snapshot of that moment. And, I mean, we definitely push ourselves all the time to just be like, let's, you know, okay, like let's get this a little tighter. Let's, you know, be as together as we can and in tune as we can. And we work hard on that. And like, but the important thing is that you have to remember, like, okay, this is a snapshot of this time. I think we're out of time. Is that what you're saying? Yeah.
let's take some questions.
Like one more question because it's 53. Do you ever have one? I tried with Eli a little bit. With what is it called, like Jam Kazam or
We
something?
tried it with Jam Kazam, yeah. Yeah. It's a little rough, yeah.
I found that
Jamulus,
like
too.
if it is not bouncing through too many routers. So for example, like somebody lives in New York, somebody else lives like across the bridge in New Jersey, something like that. It's like pretty good. It can be pretty good if you're using like Ethernet connection and stuff. But like we try like Nashville and Central Michigan, and it was just like, oh, it's kind of like, you know, you kind of had to ignore the other person,
Yeah,
like, you know, because like there was
Anti-rehearsal.
that little bit of delay, yeah.
Play a really slow song, you know? Give people
Yeah,
more
it's
time.
very ethereal, where it's just like, okay, here's a chord, and then somebody else can improv, and I think that's fine.
I know there are bigger companies working on that though. Like there's
Yeah.
some people who do stuff for the military that are trying to do that with audio recording as well, and so maybe in the future.
I just don't believe it'll ever happen. Like, I think that there's so much that we're learning. Like, I mean, it's like we're listening to so many things. It's like I'm like subtly listening to Eli's heartbeat over here. You know, it's like there's so many things you cannot recreate in that.
Yeah.
Anyway,
sure.
that's my take on that, but hopefully I'll be proved wrong because that would be incredible.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
All right, thank you guys so much for coming. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday.
Go to that, if you're a string player, go to the string jam across the way.
String jam across the way.
We might have to like run out and catch flights, but please like find us on Instagram, and we do have a Discord channel that we really are trying to be more active in. So if you join our Discord, we will answer questions there. No Discord?
Alan will talk to you in there.
I always talk to
Yeah,
you.
Alan's great.
So if you got a question about any of this stuff, go to Discord and Alan will tell us.
Do you have the link tree? Can you pull the link tree thing up on the Discord?
Alan, what is the Discord link? Is it just on our website?
The Discord link?
I'm
It's-
going to
it's
go
on
ahead and
the
leave
link
some
tree.
business cards out here, and you can
Yes,
find
it's on the link tree.
everything
I'm just
there.
thinking- I was just thinking, I was like, is it on our Instagram? Is it on our? I have
We have
business cards,
definitely
I
not
guess,
had a
yeah.
lot of sleep these last few days. Thank you so much for coming, everyone. And please, I'll have business cards out here, and I'll come get you. Yeah, come ask us questions in our Discord link and Instagram and Facebook.